rice fields, motherfucker!
China used to be the greatest power in the world. Now it's in pieces, which has left it nothing more than a place where Germany extracts their wealth from, with the entire nation being run from Beijing under the corrupt government of Puyi, who has established himself as the leader of all of China and ruler of all the warlords who serve under him. Germany being the reason why everything looks like it does, I mean it is Kaiserreich after all, has had long interest in the League of Eight Provinces, specifically, ruled by Sun Chongfeng. It being where they hold many and most of their investments has led to our people being poor, uneducated, and many left seeking a new path, the only path, the path of socialism, with Sun Chongfeng not letting any of his own people be educated, with all forms of education only being delegated to foreigners like the Germans. Most communist and socialist factions have been crushed around China, yet we've survived by gaining support from local people in the southern part of the League and fighting a guerrilla war against the warlord Sun Chongfeng. Every step of the way, we have been there against them. However, we, led by Wang Jingwei, will lead an uprising and crush the capitalist pigs, and all we need is one spark to make it happen. While we're gathering strength, the world erupts into full-scale destruction as Black Monday washes over the country. This leads many Chinese people to turn to a different path as we gather strength from those disgruntled people. We teach them that the only way to free themselves is to turn to socialism. However, as Sun Chongfeng was trying to calm people's fears, he could never have guessed that, well, he would be killed by some of the people he has spent the last 10 years oppressing. Who would have guessed that oppressing his own population would be, bad?
本违规异常，了解详情请按0。
This turned into the light that would fuel our fire, as Wang declared that now was the time to rise up. We were, however, not the only ones feasting on the League's corpse. The same did another uprising in Anqing. We do start with a decent army, and the more territory we take, the more equipment and divisions we get. So as Sun Tzu said, fortune favors the person who attacks first. Which I did, capturing major settlements and encircling divisions the League could not afford to lose right now. A relatively unknown soldier and politician named Deng Yanda had been promoted to a general, to conquer the filth of the world. With his masterful leadership, we take full control of the south, with him also being recognized by a certain someone in government. Ooh, who could it be? While we are fighting for our lives, we are invited to the Third International. Honestly, this is one of the most boring things about playing anything communist, socialist, or anything of that sort. Just know that Wang gets a stiffy every single time, like any of the syndicalist majors do like anything.
Let me quench your thirst for passion.
I'm not thirsty!
With the League also fighting a war with the Shandong clique to the north, our troops have unintentionally started clashing a bit. However, I, like most people, is a rational individual and have a simple response to people who fight against my people. Go fuck yourself, as I declare war on the capitalist pigs. With the League's fall, we finally get to relax for a couple seconds until I have to tell all my troops that, well, the fight is not done yet, as we still have to march north against Shandong. Peace? Not in my China. Shandong was a strong country, don't get me wrong, just not strong enough to hold back the people who follow the true path. While the war in the north is still taking place, our capital gets moved to Jingling. Why people think it's better to move the capital closer to the front line, I have no clue. But we did that. But I guess it doesn't matter when Shandong falls not even a couple months later. Which finally brings our new republic time to breathe and settle down. For 2 fucking seconds as we get slapped with this debuff.
Did you just laugh at me? Do I amuse you? Am I some sort of clown to you? I hate my job.
With China now settling down, we're debuffed, we just have to chill, really just like take some focuses. This brings us time to, well, talk about the path we are on. The true path, the only path, the path of Sun Yat-sen, the man who sacrificed everything for China and who is the spiritual leader of our nation. However, with stability comes political factionalism, who all see Sun Yat-sen's path in different ways. Sun Fu, who runs the centrist moderate faction that has an outwards look towards India. Soong Qingling, the wife of the late Sun Yat-sen, who understood that the socialism China needs is a uniquely Chinese socialism. And then there's of course our Lord and Savior, Wang, who wants to model China on the British and the French syndicalist model. But for now, Wang holds all the power, as he has gotten pretty popular from winning the war. With the factions still clashing, Soong Qingling starts a power struggle. The power struggle soon begins, as Wang deliberately holds Soong Qingling's faction out of any major office, which of course pisses her off, with her being the wife of Sun Yat-sen, of course bringing her very much prestige within the Socialist Party. However, even though things are going, well, pretty great, small things are not looking too good, as Wang has been showing small tendencies to use his power in an authoritarian manner. This we can't really do much about, but Soong's factions gaining lots of power by being a moderate force is outmaneuvering him at every single turn. While politics are becoming quite heated, the right Kuomintang factions has risen in the south. south, as 3 countries has bent the knee to far-right idealism and capitalistic ideas. My response to that faction? Go build your Burger King somewhere else, you dirty ape. This did mean that I was now on a bit of a timer. I could not beat 3 countries that have actually industrialized, so I had to mobilize my army of, well, basically nothing but peasants on their border. They may have 3 times my army, 4 times my mills, but I have the Chinese heart to deflect any criticism towards others. So if anybody asks, it was the capitalists that did it.
America! 9/11! Good time!
With war finally upon us, I was sweating. I mean, my army wasn't too bad, but this was a bit too much. But if they got more powerful, I would never be able to win. I set my greatest general, the Napoleon of China, Deng Yanda, to encircle the foolish capitalists. This proved to be a smash hit, until it got bogged down into a quagmire of bad supply. Okay, Tommy, go ahead and say it.
Supply is everything. What the fuck supply, man?
As that encirclement, I basically had to fight with the skin of my teeth. But that encirclement finally did get destroyed. I was too strong, as I could just plug walk into Guangxi, and they capped. With them dead, their little faction fell apart, as Hunan and Yunnan were really weak on their own. With Hunan and Yunnan basically not even having that many mills and that big of an army on their own, I was able to just, well, walk into them and they capped. With Hunan falling really quickly, and then Yunnan taking a little bit longer because, well, they had mountains. Or as the propaganda, of course, would have told you, that they all just joined me rightfully as the socialists they are, uniting the working people together or some such.
Titan has freed us! Oh, I wouldn't say free. More like under new management.
I'm over here stroking my dick. I got Russian.
Hunan was then liberated, with Yunnan following soon after, joining the banner of the true China. They will be given healthcare even if they don't want it. I now own the most land in China, controlling most of the raw resources, lots of land, and a booming population. A poor and starving population, but a large population nonetheless. I've reached a bit of like a mythic status, but as I prepare an invasion of Sichuan, Puyi, the bastard in Beijing, does the same. And with Puyi's troops on my border and the dreaded war sign at the top, true China versus pathetic puppet state. The war gets declared after the fall of Sichuan. As most troops thought they will, finally maybe get time to rest, they get dragged into the next war. Puyi had the men, the smaller front, the equipment, and even decent divisions. I was about to fuck his shit up. The first encirclement isn't big, but it's something, as Puyi apparently been more interested in sleeping than making sure his army actually defended the front. The entire front was almost cut in half, as Puyi's southern army just left the front. Anybody telling me they have like problems fighting any wars in Hearts of Iron have to be actually joking. As Beijing was taken, Puyi was dragged out and forced to negotiate. Those peace terms? Complete and utter occupation of the northern parts of China. Puyi was dragged to a cell waiting his judgment when we finally ended 2 decades of struggle. With the recapture of Beijing, we were finally recognized as the true China, as we are again smacked in the head with another debuff, hampering our economy and military. Every time I do anything in this mod, I just get slapped down like the dog I am.
I hate this place.
With the nation now again stable, problems have risen within the coalition government. Wang, our glorious leader, has become quite unpopular among other parties, as he has become more and more authoritarian. This has led to the military scheming in the shadows, with the greatest general ever, Deng Yanda, being dragged into it. However, Deng Yanda serves Soong Qingling, and with Soong knowing that the only path for China is a democratic path, he decides to not join the coup, as another coup is not what China needs right now, as Deng holds complete and utter faith that Soong can take leadership of the nation without a civil war. The government schemes and factionalism is again put on complete pause as the nation prepares for the 4th war of Chinese leadership. Border guards are set up, men on the ports, and the puppet state of Shanghai that Japan owns is completely and fully guarded. We are declared on. The Fengtian army hits us hard. However, with the newly gained territory in Hong Kong from Australia, this invigorates the Chinese people as we hit them hard and fast, crushing their lines and encircling 7 divisions. Another 4 gets encircled and then 4 again. The Japanese, seeing the utter incompetence of their Chinese puppet state, finally steps in to take control. The Japanese troops are a lot better equipped than their Chinese counterpart. Finally stop my push. However, this leads to gaps in the Shanghai puppet, as they have not gotten nearly enough reinforcements, as their valiant fight gets cut short and reintegrated into the country. Also, Wang just gets stripped down in this uniform for some reason. I mean, crazy drip from my main Wang. As these developments are unfolding, the Great War breaks out, and even though Japan is fighting in a losing war against me, they joined the Second World War for some reason. Okay, I mean, it really isn't that weird. They did the same thing in real life, just complete and utter LARPing from Japan.
In the world could do, it's like
sucks. Damn.
Damn, my shit was whack.
The Fengtian AI eating more rocks than humanly possible finally breaks as they lose their capital. The Japanese launch semi-successful naval invasions. These do prove problematic. Wait, first time Simo is having any problems in one of his videos? What? With the Korean border on the horizon, I send in every man, woman and unsupervised child at the local McDonald's directly into the Japanese lines of fire. The Japanese not realizing that I could probably lose 50 million manpower and still have enough manpower to sleep with their Emperor Hirohito's fat wife. This begins the countdown, the fading sun, which means if they don't recapture all of Korea, they are forced to give up. The Japanese did do a lot of naval invasions to try and get it back, but with my men dug into Korea harder than other men are dug into a girl's DMs, I wasn't gonna lose Korea. Okay, maybe that joke was a bit harsh, guys. Here's a picture of my friend Toby as an apology. The Japanese finally sent a peace offer. Considering my navy was at the bottom of the sea, I had to take that deal, as there was no way I would ever land on the Japanese home islands. I gained all the two puppets' lands, Shanghai and Fengtian, which meant that the Chinese struggle against imperialism had finally ended. For now. A Korean puppet state was set up and we could finally focus on the last warlords who still held land in Chinese territory. Chiang Kai-shek, who did help me in the war, they were in my faction. I didn't really mention this because if the AI doesn't have a direct border with an enemy, they usually just like sit there and just sniff glue, gave up their independence. With the end of the war, the factionalism in China was coming to a head. Wang versus Soong Chengling, and that dude Sun Fo, who had just been sitting in the corner eating popcorn and doing literally nothing, was reaching its climax. Soong during the war had gained major power for herself and her allies, notably the general Deng Yanda, who had become her most trusted aide and supporter from the military faction. With politics being in full swing, the borders of Russian aligned factions were in full swing as well, as Russia offered to not engage in any Chinese wars as long as we did not touch Mongolia. We of course agreed, for now, as Russia was still in the middle of the Great War, so it wouldn't be out of the question to just take it while the Russians weren't looking. Wang's position as the leader of our nation had been a bit of a compromise candidate kind of thing, but over the period of the wars he had become more and more authoritarian, trying to snatch up as much power for himself. This had not gone unnoticed, as he had even within his own circle been called a dictator. Realizing his position had become untenable, he had declared a national congress so he could use his level 100 speech stat to calm people's fears. The congress would invite every small and major faction, his enemies, his allies attended. During this, lots of central issues would be discussed. One of the biggest for the nation was the fate of the puppet king Hu Yi. Most wanted them dead, some wanted him exiled. However, lots of people still saw him as the rightful ruler of China. So to not alienate that chunk of the population, he would be placed under house arrest so he would not become a martyr for their cause. The three major socialist parties had during the Congress realized that they don't really care much for each other and don't really agree on much anymore, as most of the reasons they had stood together was just because of external issues such as, wars against Japan and other Chinese factions. The coalition collapsed, with even harder calls for Wang to step down due to his dictator-like behavior by the popcorn eater Sun Fo. During the Congress, Soong Chengling now had her time to speak. She stood up and called Wang out for being kind of a dick, and everybody decided to stand up and clap. Wang, seeing that not even a single person from his former coalition and even his own party liked him anymore, he did like the French government and collapsed into tears. Soong had won. She was now the new leader of the government. The world was finally right. China was stable and the Second Weltkrieg was over, with the syndicalists taking major territory in Europe and Russia being, well, the most dominant faction in the Middle East. As China was rebuilding from the chaos that we could finally, settle down and just try to remake China and integrate other puppets, the world decided to go to war. Russia versus the syndicalist faction. I was honestly content staying out of this, as China had no need of the stinky syndicalists, as they were supporters of Wang and Sun Fo, and enjoy the show as we had our own problems, as Japan still held ports in China. We demanded it and they declined. I said that would mean war, and they folded like a lawn chair. Never play a game of chicken if you aren't willing to, well, suck a dick. My next conquest would be Tibet. However, Tibet was defended by India. Diplomatic-minded people did come up with a compromise solution. We would get Chinese lands for Tibet's independence. Seeing this as a good deal, I took it. Russia not noticing me fucking around with Mongolia would be their own undoing, as Mongolia would submit to my power, becoming the mega socialist republic of Mongolia. The Russians evidently too busy fighting to not notice me breaking our agreement. Japan, apparently becoming very nostalgic for the war we just had a year ago, declared war on me again, and they were absolutely demolished in Indochina, where they had set up puppet states that fell one by one. Now we were right back to where we were, as I still had no navy, so all I could do was destroy their naval invasions. This was not the real issue, however. Japanese invading my shores, those could easily be destroyed, but my faith in the syndicalists of Europe had completely and utterly collapsed, as they had been pushed all the way back to the French border. Even though Soong and her government had no reason to help the backstabbers of Europe, she knew if she didn't help them, the entire world would be ruled by Vladimir III and his imperialist world. So even if the Japanese were still at war with us, we had to make preparations for a big push north. Stronger divisions had to be created. The world of the Red Sun was crumbling, and we were its only defender. Even with Japanese on my shores, I had a greater calling. As my men reached the vast border with Russia, Soong looked at a picture of Sun Yat-sen, her late husband. If he could see where his wife was right now, he would be a happy man. She sent the notice, and over 100 Chinese divisions crossed the border with Russia. Russia now had a two-front war. As most of the border was very lightly defended, I took major parts of Siberia without any troops really stopping me. When the Russians finally did arrive, they were completely beaten back and encircled. Major and small encirclements would happen across the border, yet most of what would be caught was just puppet troops. So it really didn't hurt Russia very much. The Syndicalists finally catching a break from my massive invasion into Russia would finally push the Russians back a small bit. But actually taking Russian industry would be vital to this war. Especially when the Syndicalists were also at war with the exiled faction, exiled Canada, exiled France, that also included the United States. This meant the war had truly turned against the Syndicalists, as I had become the only hope for a red world. My army had pushed Russia back to the Urals, as the Russians' greatest ally, the low amount of fucking supply in Russia, had become a sinkhole of my men. Arms, tanks, and the non-existent airports meant there was a slog. The Russians actually losing core territory with industry in it was what really got the Russians to focus on me, as the Syndicalists finally retook large parts of Germany back. With my extensive air force, my tank force that had just been created, and my men who were rushing into the supplied areas, there was nothing stopping the scale of the Chinese industry, which had become one of the largest in the world. The fall of major Russian cities was the end of their fledgling imperialist ambitions, as industry was transferred from them to me. And with me focusing on the most powerful thing in Hoi4 against AI, tanks that only focused on soft attacks, I was encircling the divisions left and right. With the fall of Moscow, Russia was finished, as the industry was laid to waste as the dogs they were. My tanks pushing into Ukraine sucked out whatever they had left to defend against me. With my tanks smashing into Petrograd, Russia fell. Small issue I have with the peace system, I do think it's very cool, sure. But just because the Syndicalists lost that many men against the Russians, why did they gain that much score? Because I was the one that actually defeated Russia. Not very fucking cool game, honestly. When I had to come save their ass. But I guess Syndicalists of the world, yeah. Keep the RP going, keep the RP going, keep the RP going. With Russia being made into a Chinese puppet, and the efforts of Soong's most trusted general, Deng Yanda, being now known as the Red Napoleon, the Chinese Republic would be secure for another fucking Japan.
Oh shit. Shit indeed.
So I made a bunch of U-boats. They really didn't do enough, or, well, enough as I wanted them to. So I used the Russian fleet, which I gained from the peace deal, to gain supremacy. First Taiwan, and then I landed in Japan. The amount of PTSD I get from hearing naval invasion sounds is absolutely horrendous. I had to hear that 100 times during the Russian war. The Japanese had also gained allies, so invaded the Philippines and installed a puppet government. The Siamese had to be invaded as well, because they, well, weren't my puppet. The Indonesians were then invaded by the Syndicalists, and also me. I didn't get any score in that war apparently, so I didn't get any of the land. The world of the Red Sun had finally dawned, as Soong and Deng could finally rest. While Europe was still at war, China had removed their biggest enemy, Russia. While the Republic still had lots of stuff to work on, it would be in pale comparison to the immense amount of work that Soong and Deng had already done. Sun Yat-sen's legacy was saved by Soong. Deng held complete another overlordship over all of China's armies and was now the supreme commander of all of Chinese armies. The Red World had dawned, an age of unprecedented peace, love, and healthcare.